Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're back live. Apologies for that. So now sharing the right screen. So we can continue. Yeah, we incorporated Vizlib Poland, so we formally have a subsidiary as a small daughter company in Poland. And with this, we have also hired 5 new people who have started with us in December. We're very, very excited about them. We actually have a very good relationship with the university in Poznan. So one of our lead developers, Andrzej, is actually doing lectures, and we are getting the best students to come work with Vizlib at the beginning as a part of an internship, but then they become full-time junior developers. And in that intake, we have 5 new. One of them is senior actually in that intake, but we expect that to grow over the next couple of months to execute faster on our roadmap. So this is exciting news. Took a while to set up, but this is great. We're growing as always, as promised. Aside from that, for those of you who have not seen this, we have launched a Vizlib Christmas extension, right? So it's a Christmas extension where you can basically just add it to your sheet and add a festive cake to your ClickSense dashboards, either by adding a secret Santa, a snow, garlands, and transform your apps in a Christmas celebration effectively. Don't put it in production, but I think it's quite a nice gimmick that I encourage you to show. So I can show you an example of that we have created here, which we call Christmas shopping. Where we have a KPI object from the Christmas competition, and you see there Santa moving from the left. So this is an extension that is sitting on the screen here. So you see the tiny present icon, and here you can choose which Christmas decorations you want to show, which ones you want to hide. You know, how much snow do you want? Do you want to increase the snake? Maybe you have a snowstorm and you can increase that massively, or even increase the snowflakes to something much bigger if you wanted to, depending on where you are. You know, perhaps in Finland, you should increase that as a matter of fact. So yeah, just a funny extension. It's available for you guys to download just for a short period of time on our portal. And yeah, we will remove it back in January, so make sure to use it. So when you come in here in the download portal, you see here, this is a Christmas extension. Yeah, there for about 1 month. Enjoy it and create some cool examples. So with this to continue, obviously another very, very, very great news we have is that we have a new addition to the DataViz Market. I'm just going to outline it briefly, but we're probably going to have a separate webinar where the creator of the extension of Acumen BI is actually walk you through it and explain to you exactly what it does, what it's used for, and how powerful it is for the use cases that you guys are interested in. For those of you who do not remember or don't know, Vizlib has the DataViz Market store here on our website. Now, these are extensions which have been developed by our accredited partners, so people, you know, we trust and we think produce high quality extensions. And ultimately, we give them a platform to realize their ideas, right? So we have, for example, you know, the timeline by Take Solutions, which is a quite popular extension. Yeah, here it is. So there's one extension, right, that is out there. It's not supported by Vizlib, but you can still purchase it via Vizlib or subscribe to it. We will handle the communication. Right, and the newest extension on the market is the Acumen BI control chart, right, the eye chart. It's, from what I understand, a statistical processing control chart where you can put in a population of data into your line chart, see how it's trending over time, and easily spot statistical outliers depending on some rules that you can set up. Especially very, very valuable for healthcare use cases and customers. So, you know, moving average is used here as well, plus, you know, many more rules that you can look at to utilize. So a vertical specific extension. And we're going to have a separate session on this where Acumen BI is going to walk you through it. But in the meantime, DataViz Market, you can download it for free. You can explore it for 60 days and see what it's for. It actually has even an example app together with it that you can look at. You can see what it's doing, what the key configurations are, how it looks like. and what it's, how you can actually use it to visualize and make more out of your data than, just a simple line chart in this case. So that's out there, DataViz Market. Just a brief presentation of that. You can explore it. So yeah, continuing now to the interesting stuff, latest updates. Obviously, working very, very heavily on performance improvements, bug fixes. So, I'm not going to outline those in detail. You can, as always, go to our website and see on our blog post here where we have the monthly releases, the monthly packs. In those monthly packs, if you don't already know this, you have the ability to go and see a consolidated change log of what exactly has been changed, what bugs has been improved for every single extension over the last kind of 30 days, right? For those of you who want to get a more real-time update, don't forget, we also have our community. Our community effectively is where we are posting our latest updates. So over here, you can kind of go to the forum, and in the forum you will see here what's new in Vizlib. You see Vizlib bar chart was released today, and you can see when and as things are released. Important, follow this forum, then you'll get emails whenever something new is being released. So that's just for you as a reminder where you can get the latest updates and be informed about them. But moving forward, more interestingly, what kind of new features have we worked on, right? So the focus has been a little bit in the past few weeks on the table and the pivot table. One thing that we want to introduce more holistically in our library is actions on click, so more interactions, more dynamic user experience with our charts. So for example, and I'll showcase that shortly, you can click and then you can move to a different sheet. HTML tooltips, right? So sometimes you want to get more meaning about your data, so you can actually embed that now within a tooltip where you can get more context, and vertical labels for the pivot table. So these are things, if not already released, they should be available in today or tomorrow. So yeah, the reason being is very, very simple. Very often when you pivot something horizontally, especially product group, let's say here, obviously you have a lot of records, right? So if you display them horizontally, the titles will be cut off. Let me see. One question. Table settings. Right, so pivot table settings, you will now have the ability to.
Sorry, it should be an appearance. Yeah, so we're gonna change this on the release.
Is it an appearance, David? Yeah. Sorry, I have not made myself familiar yet with that functionality. It's literally hot off the press as we speak.
Can you go to the dimensions maybe?
Fair enough. Dimensions, and then we go to product group. Fair enough. Header label position. So I'm probably going to move that somewhere else because it was a little bit hard to find. But instead of having it horizontally, you see the problem. The labels are breaking up. So instead, you can put them vertically, so you can then shrink it maybe a little bit smaller. So yeah, that's a small thing. It wasn't easy to implement. So it's also supported when you export this to Excel. This is created. So these are all the various considerations that we need to take into account. And we're probably also going to flip this so you can read it left to right. But that's one setting that will be made available. We had 2 requests, I think, from 2 Swedish customers. So that's available. Now, the other thing is quite nice is following, right? So we now look into individual numbers, right? Like 0.3, or in the bar chart. So that's all fine, I can see the number, but very often we were asked to provide more context around it, right? So what we've done here is now on the individual cell, if you look at it doesn't matter if it's measure or dimension, but you will have here the ability to define cell tooltips, right? So the cell tooltips effectively create a pop-up, and here you can embed HTML. And that could be anything. It can be a hyperlink, that can be a chart, that can be, a further explanation, a table, like a more a mini dashboard effectively. So in this case, we're adding an image, right, that is then effectively displayed. And when I go in here and I'm looking, for example, at my sales reps, I can see here, you know, images around them. So this is the purpose of effectively the tooltip, that you can get more context around this. So, you know, we had a couple of requests. I want to show, you know, 2 links that go to Salesforce, or I go to another dashboard when I look on a metric, or a mini gauge chart that provides me more context or supplementing information. So you can easily add that now very easily by going, you know, as I just highlighted, into the measure settings and go into the tooltip. Here it is. Yeah, activate the tooltips, right? So you see that now, and then you can play around with. You can make it custom, so you can then add, you know, either an expression. You can say some sales plus, you know, embed this with an HTML tag if you wanted to, for example. So that's a little bit the idea that we wanted to do. So we give you the tools. I want to see some interesting implementations now from you guys around this. So that's available as of, it will be today, later today. We have not just released it yet, but it'll be there. Now, the other thing and I got it, is when people are looking at tables, right? They always look at aggregations, subtotals or totals. And very often the use case has been, and I can at least count 10 support tickets around this feature request, that if somebody sees a number and they click on it, they drill down in a more detailed view, right? Now, whereas of course we cannot provide you a detailed view in the extension, we can, however, combine it with actions. So for example, what you can do here is you have the ability in every single measure to actually define at the very bottom actions, what happens when you click on it, right? Obviously you make a selection, that's native table. Of course, you can also deactivate selections, make it read only, and then suppress them. But what happens when you click on it? So when you click on this, for example, this icon, you then activate a sheet, which gives you the details, right? And you can do that on a column level. So here, for example, I'm looking at, I don't know, Mexico, I'm seeing the trends. And if I click on this button, right, I'm making a selection, Mexico, and I'm now moving to a different sheet, which has all the details, all the records on Mexico effectively. And that's a little bit the purpose behind it. So we actually have almost like a user experience drill down flow that ultimately makes sense, right? We just need to also introduce a tiny back button here, but you can use a Vizlib advanced text object, which moves you back to the initial view. But that's a little bit the idea behind this. And that has been requested a lot, and I think it'll be very, very valuable. Now, these 2 features, the tooltip as well as the actions, at the moment only in the table, but will find themselves also in the pivot table. We want to make sure we release that first for 1-2 weeks, see if, you know, what the responses are, and then eventually we will then take it further and, you know, implement it in the pivot table as well. And I think that's where this will become interesting as well. So yeah, actions, as I highlighted, every column will have at the very, very bottom the ability to add actions when you click on the cell, and that can be anything from, you can even combine selections, you can lock selections, right? Click on a row, lock the selections, and then do something else, open a URL, set a variable. So I don't know, I cannot think of, you know, all the use cases, but I'm pretty sure there will be very specific ones. As I said, as always, you know, it's we give the tools to you to organize it and to use it. So that's available. Will be available today or tomorrow morning. David is actually testing it. We have a couple of use cases that we need to run through first before we release it. But yeah, so that's one very very exciting feature release. Now, obviously, the second big achievement, I would almost say, is the ability to print a PDF into PowerPoint. I know some of you on the call have pushed very hard for this, reasonably. I mean, it's a reasonable request to be able to export the sheet. You have nice looking charts, you want to see it in PDF or PowerPoint, and you want to share this then via email, put it on a shared drive, or just print it on a printer, right? So this is an example of a Vizlib sheet where we have 4 different Vizlib extensions, print it in one go, and you see it looks really, really nice, and you can open it in PDF. So to give you an example, I have opened up our ClickSense server, and I'll show you some of those printing capabilities in action. Now, it was a bit of a long journey because we have to update and implement printing in all our 15 or 16 extensions that we had in place. But yeah, luckily we did this, and obviously with the help of Click in Click R&D, this was quite straightforward after some time for us. So yeah, just to show an example. So this is one of the KPI designer challenge submissions, the Christmas KPI. From Michael Laverick. I think he finished 3rd place. But anyway, what I'm trying to show you here is, you can go in now here. This is a Vizlib KPI object, and you can export the sheet to PDF. And effectively, what it'll do is, obviously to the limitations of how ClickSense is printing, right? For example, ClickSense is never printing the selection bar. It's also excluding, I think, the sheet at the top, plus leave some space occasionally, but either way, you now have the ability, to print Vizlib extensions, which, here is. So, very interesting. Also, the quality is not bad; it's actually quite good. So you can actually print it, and I don't think you'll see many pixels. Same also applies to the line chart or to any other chart when you want to use them in story modes, right? So this is. Unfortunately, you can only export your sheet to PDF. That's a limitation here. You don't have more options. However, if you wanted to, you can go into the story mode right here and generate your story, your presentation. You can say Vizlib webinar demo and use that now here at the top left to export to PDF again or to PowerPoint. Up to you, and effectively a very powerful feature of ClickSense, but ultimately, yeah, very important. Vizlib extensions are supported, so stuff like annotations now can be included in a presentation. So, took us a while. We're there, and as always, we will resolve them no matter how long it will take us. So thank you very much for your patience. That is now available, and yeah, for you to consume. Make sure you download the latest versions, especially the guys here who are on-premise. Right, taking it further now to the highlight of this webinar, and one of my personal favorite extensions that we have to date built and released. To give you a background, so this is a Vizlib sheet menu, right? The idea is to give you the ability to customize the ClickSense navigation panel at the top, to give it a more branded look and feel, to make it more presentable, and very important, to control which buttons, which functionality you show or you hide within your ClickSense apps. Very often I receive feedback that people deployed ClickSense to a wider user audience, and users, business users especially, we're confused by all those various buttons, sheet, bookmarks, and navigation, go back, save, edit menu, and we kind of want to remove that complexity, or at least give you the possibility to remove that complexity. That's the first thing. And the second thing, give your users and yourselves a great way to navigate between the apps, between your app, between your sheets, almost like you were on a website. That's what people are used to. So these are the two things that we were trying to tackle with this exercise. Very important. Because that's not possible in ClickSense otherwise with native capabilities, people very often go the mashup route. And from what I know, what I've heard, 60% of people who go the mashup route do this because they want to implement a navigation. So perhaps with our extension, that will not necessarily be the case anymore. So hopefully a good and viable alternative. So I'm going to move now and show you the sheet menu. Here, live in action. So, right. So what you do is, classic case, you just drag and drop it into the screen, and by default, you will have the ability to create the menu either with a wizard that I will showcase you, or the other property panel on the right-hand side. What the sheet menu does on a high level, it replaces what you see here at the top, right? So right now, you see here, you have your selection bars. Obviously, I've not built a dashboard here, but it doesn't matter. I don't want to distract you too much. But here at the top, you see now exactly the sheets. You see different sub-menus, and these are effectively just navigation menus, right? So you can click on one of those and you go somewhere else, or you go back effectively. So you have a guided analytics experience by letting the users navigate between the various sheets that you have available in your app. Again, you might not expose all sheets. You might only have 20 sheets and only show 5 sheets to your users, right? So that's a little bit a nice way, because at the end of the day, honestly, end users don't care whether they're using ClickSense, whether they're using something else. They just want something that looks nice, right? So white labeling is key here. But coming back to the property panel, right? So what is it that we are kind of offering? So obviously, you can control the appearance of the top panel, right? You can change the colors. I've used Vizlib Blue naturally here, but you can choose anything else you want. You can also, embed variables, so you can have your core color, your secondary color. You can also very, very easily in the top menu add a logo. So I've added the Vizlib logo here. I can hide it if I want to, but I can bring it back up. I can actually even add a tiny offset. Not sure that makes sense, but if you ever have a logo that a little bit overlaps of your sheet, you can actually achieve this one as well. So it's entirely up to you. You have obviously the sheet menu items, but I'll come to that in a second. But what's more important is buttons, right? So you have the native buttons that ClickSense gives you, such as stories, but perhaps you want to expose it or you want to hide it, right? In this case, I've kept it simple. I removed that capability because I don't want to give the users the ability to create stories. It doesn't make sense, perhaps, in this application. So I'm removing that. I'm removing the edit button. Why should people see an edit button here? That's confusing. The dashboard is read-only using ClickSense. And so this way you can kind of you can add next sheet, previous sheet, you control all those elements that are typically available in your classic ClickSense app. And effectively, that's what we're giving you here, the control to remove them, keep it simple, leave functionality you're interested in, remove functionality you don't want to see. Now, aside from that, obviously, these are the native ClickSense buttons. We also have the ability to add custom buttons, right? So for example, you can add a custom icon here, a search, which effectively, you can add a test and you can add a tooltip. So the info icon is actually quite useful if you want to add a tooltip. Same as with all other tooltips that we have, you will have the ability to add a text here, right? And that can be something simple to start with, but actually where this becomes interesting is if you have a big HTML page that explains all your metrics, for example. What is average sales? What is RWA? Risk-weighted assets? Provide context to a user if he's lost. Where am I looking at my screen? Here it is. The tooltip can be something very, very large and explain all those things. It also supports HTML, so you can even embed, a CRM tool or CRM platform. Actually, very interesting requirements that we had. That's why we implemented this. And we thought a custom text would help. That could be either not necessarily the sheet name, right? The sheet name is a different setting that is here at the title here. But perhaps you want to add a custom name here, which is perhaps your username that you can put in here, or something else, up to you entirely. But yeah, or you can remove it altogether, up to you. So that's the idea of a menu and the buttons. Now, and I'll come to the sheet and the navigation concept shortly. We also can manipulate the selection menu, right? So perhaps you want to show the selection menu, you want to hide it. I don't recommend you should hide it. It's a powerful functionality. It's up to you though. But if you want to show this, you can then perhaps, play a little bit with the left padding, move it from left to right. You can, perhaps you don't want to expose the search button. Perhaps you don't want to show the insights. You have control of exactly what is visible in your navigation panel here and which selections are applied. That's a little what we wanted to give you the ability to. So that's a selection menu that we offer. One personal thing that I always found annoying is this thing, the sheet title. Every ClickSense app has a sheet title, which is fine, you can add it, but it takes up so much space, right? So, and space is very, very valuable. Real estate is very valuable on the sheet. So we added here the ability to completely remove it if you want to. Sorry, not the sheet menu. You can remove that one as well entirely, but the sheet titles. And that creates more space for the charts, for the data that ultimately matters. So next, obviously, the top menu, we also have a side menu here, right? The side menu is a little bit similar, but what it does is instead of allowing navigation via the top panel, you kind of have a right-hand panel here that, you know, you can do the same things. You can add groups, categories, and you can add sheets that people can navigate around with. But I'll come to that shortly. So what do we have? How do you create those sheets here at the top, right? So obviously you can go into the property panel. What we have two things. We have groups in the sheet menu items, and we have elements, right? So here, the first one is, you know, indicates that the sheet menu here is an actual sheet. If I click on this, it will navigate me somewhere. However, if I click on settings, it will not navigate me somewhere. It will drop down, and I can choose an icon here that I want. You know, perhaps I want to show an apple, up to you, but it will drop down a menu of child elements, right? And the child elements here, again, could be another group, right? So if you click on settings on wizard menu, you can nest groups effectively for a better navigation, or it can be a sheet effectively, at which point, you know, that's it. If you click on wizard menu, it then navigates to a sheet of your choice that is available in your app. So it's actually looking at the available sheets that you have there and effectively, you know, navigates them there, puts in an action. So the cool thing is, you know, again, with Vizlib, show and hide, right? So perhaps you don't want to show the wizard menu, side menu for everybody. You want to only show it when a certain variable has been selected. So you can conditionally update this. That's a little bit the power. So you can even have contextualized navigation menus. If somebody is a manager, she sees 5 sheets. If somebody is, you know, an analyst, only 2 sheets. If somebody is, for example, a super user, he can also see the edit button. You get what I mean? Having that control over the user profiles and kind of implementing that using this logic, aside from security rules, which is the most solid way, but is actually a very, very user-friendly way. Or perhaps region, right? Somebody looks at my dashboard and he's from Germany. German market is different to the Danish market, for example. They could look at different products, different distributors. So perhaps the landing page should be somewhere else. He should be navigating to different sheets. So these are kind of things that you can now control with our sheet menu, and that's what we wanted to give you an offer. Obviously, you know, not just conditional show and hide. We inherited the same logic as with the container. You can apply actions, right? So if somebody selects a sheet, so for example, I'm going back to my Vizlib sheet menu. This is my home page. This is my landing page. And this is the starting point, right? So whenever I go back to my starting point, I can add an action, which is, for example, clearing selections. So everything that I've selected all goes back, I clear that, right? Or perhaps I'm going to a sheet which has a region, so I make sure a region is selected and locked, so you cannot fiddle around with it. So that's kind of things that we give you to play with to create your very own bespoke customer experience and user experience. One feature that we actually wanted to work on as well, that actually came last week, is default sheet. So by default, when you, regardless where you open the app, you land on the default sheet as a first starting point. We'll see how we'll implement that. But effectively, that's how you organize it. Now, you can obviously add those groups individually here. That's the techie way. But what we've done here is we've also created a top menu wizard, right? So if you click on the wizard, it actually generates those groups here, the Vizlib sheet menu settings, presettings, and you can nicely then see here, you can relabel them. Instead of calling it settings, you can call it, you know, webinar, and effectively you can then add the available sheets are all visible on the right hand side, and you can keep adding them as you see them fit, either as an element or you can actually put it in as a group effectively. Actually, yeah, here's how you create a group effectively. New webinar group, and I'm going to add preset sheet here. Perfect. Save it, and you see this is now created. Now, the same thing also applies for the side menu, right? So the side menu can also be created with a wizard, right? Here we have 2 more concepts, right? Because the side menu is hidden, you can add a little bit more stuff to it, right? So obviously you have groups here, and you can add different sheets for navigation purposes. But what you can also add is, for example, a text, right? So for example, you can say navigation. Oops. Right, and you put the navigation at the top to separate this, and then you have a line which separates the lines, and then you can say, now I want to add a master item. Now it looks at available master items, such as, for example, the company filter. I'm adding perhaps another master item here, which is the Vizlib calendar. Right, and let's give this all a text, which is perhaps here, which I'm going to call selections. Right, and I'm going to save that. So now if I go on the right-hand side, you see here that I have selections, right? And I have a company filter, so I can make selections here very easily. Like if I navigate through my sheet, and also I have the Vizlib calendar here if somebody wanted to select dates, right? So that is also possible. I need to go out of edit menu to activate that. Right. What did I do? I don't want to lose the changes. Right, perhaps let me just add it back just for the demo here, so I know how to get out of it. Here we are, right? So if I now select the side menu, which will be consistent across ultimately the app, right? And then you can use it for making selections. So this way you can hide a couple of filters and ultimately improve a level of user experience as well. So that's a little bit it in a nutshell. That's the version 1. We want to introduce some more mobile friendliness. Of course, we have already kind of introduced responsiveness. So if you make this very small and the titles become unreadable, this will eventually then become a burger, right, automatically. So everything that is done here will be translated into a burger on the right-hand side. So it's a little bit responsive, but we want to add more functionality to it. But yeah, I see already we have some questions. So I'm quickly, hopefully, going to wrap this up so we can talk about the questions, which I think are revolving around the sheet menu. Right, so this is the sheet menu. Already out there, I encourage you to explore it. Now, with regards to the roadmap and to the next steps, right, where we are. So we have so far released 17 extensions, right, which you can see at the top. So our promise to continuously deliver and add value to a library is consistent, right? And we are working on this, we're delivering on this. Now, I'll be honest, I thought some of the extensions would be delivered faster than others. The reason being, for example, sheet menu, we said originally August, September, and then eventually it became November, right? Now, typically the reason for that is not that we are overestimating ourselves, it's more that other things come in between. So for example, the printing that had priority, we obviously have prioritized feature requests, emergency bug fixes that we need to look at. So generally in our roadmap, before we work on new stuff, quality, stability comes key. Obviously, we need to also continuously evolve our roadmap, but to give you an idea, like, we try to work on it, deliver as soon as possible, but if there are any concerns, bugs, or any other kind of things that have been raised by our customers, that will take priority, and that's why we have been a little bit slower than expected. Having said that, slider and combo chart have already begun, are already making progress. As a matter of fact, I can give you a sneak peek of our combo charts today. So if I come in here, you can see that we already have a working copy here, which is effectively combining bars with icons, symbols, and ultimately lines now as well. So at the moment, this is just a working copy, but you will have the ability here to define one dimension and multiple measures, right? And in this case, you have budget average sales. Yeah, I think that's budget, that is green, yeah, which can be defined as a line. We don't have many settings here, but of course, you'll be able to change the color. It's not working now, but eventually that's how you'll modify it. So that's something that is coming. It's in the works. Obviously, we want to make sure that all other stuff are being catered for, but we hope to have, you see, you can show it horizontally, vertically. So it's easy to say, sorry, easy to say we'll release this, but we have so many permutations that we need to take into consideration. that actually that's what's taking time, not actually adding the line. It's more making sure it's tested in all various combinations. Now, yeah, so that's available. That's going to be available. I guess we're working on this. I think January, early January. This is our next priority, as promised on our roadmap and our polls. Sheet menu out now, the combo chart, but we're also going to add some more features on the pivot table and also on the sheet menu now that it's obviously had its first release. The other thing that we're working on is in parallel, as a matter of fact. So I mentioned we have now 5 more people, so I think 11 people in total in Poland. We're parallelizing development, so we're working on multiple streams. The other stream that we're working on is the Vizlib slider. This has already begun. The reason being is it's relatively simple and good for beginners to pick up. So that's why we decided to do this one as well, even though we know other things are more requested. But yeah, the idea will be you can use a variable or you can use a slider to make selections from 2 selections. And the goal is pixel perfect here. So a slider needs to look nice. We have some cool examples here that we will replicate. So that will, yeah, that is work in progress. Again, with the sheet menu, we did this. Did this last time. So if any one of you guys on the call is interested in the sheet menu, in the combo chart or in the slider, and you have particular use cases, we can include you in the beta, where we show you every week a little bit of progress and get your opinion, get your feedback, to kind of, obviously you guys help us to build the perfect solution, but at the same time, we build a solution to your needs as well, right? So it's a win-win from both sides. If you're interested, please give us a ping at support@vizlib.com, which extension you have a vested interest in for your project, and we'll include you in the feedback loop effectively in the beta as it is. So I'm more excited about the questions. We have about, yes, let me open that up and go with that. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, thank you for reminding me, David, is on the sheet menu, right? Coming back to here. So obviously you have the ability to create your own sheet menu, to style it in any way you want. But same with a KPI object, perhaps at this stage, you might be a little bit overwhelmed. So what we've done is we've created some presets. So instead of having it using Vizlib Blue, you can choose, for example, Vodafone Red here, and then transform it into a different style. Or you can use a futuristic matrix black with green, just to give you a little bit of a contrast. I think it looks ugly. Anyway, it just shows you what it does. But I think the true value here is, and that's where we're going a little bit with our 2019 ideas, give you the abilities to create a preset. So you create your sheet menu, you save it, and then by default, it's always there, and that's the only preset your guys can use. So if you, for example, are Vodafone Red, so you can then create it, you can save it, and then every time somebody else uses the extension, he can use that preset. So that's hopefully a way how you can standardize your approach, and that's something we will then introduce ultimately for the rest of our library, hopefully as well, where it makes sense, but starting with the sheet menu effectively. So that is that. Perhaps let me come back to something which is a little bit nicer looking, such as the Vodafone Red. And then, yeah, dive into questions. Right, so one very, very, very important question from one of our esteemed customers in Copenhagen is, so the 2019 roadmap looks a little bit low in terms of a new groundbreaking functionality, right? So the question is, what will be the next big thing that we will deliver? So very important, when I look at this roadmap here, so this is, sorry, this is the wrong slide. Here we are. If we're looking here at this functionality, this is not the 2019 roadmap, right? So this is just what we kind of had in goal for 2019 and what we are wrapping up at this stage. We're big opposers to so we're not going to cease product development and then focus on sale, and that's it. So what we will continue is continue enriching the library, continuing developing new visualizations. But in terms of what are the big new things that we'll be working on, Obviously, we'll be releasing here and there a couple of charts, be it a word cloud, a bullet chart, trellis chart. Trellis chart is actually one thing that I'm advocating very highly for an early Q1 2019. But one thing that we're deeply, deeply interested in, and we're currently investigating that, is to introduce write back functionality, so commentary. So you will have the ability on your chart, on your dashboards, to right click anywhere you want and put an annotation that can then be seen by other people. You can put annotation on a chart, you can put a comment, you can collaborate on this, or you can even put a comment on a chart level. That could be either on a table, right click and put a comment on a cell explaining a number, or it could even be on a line chart, right click, add vertical reference line. Martin Mahler commented, this was a special event that you need to look at. We're still looking at how exactly we will implement that. Commentary is a word sounds easy, but technically, especially around where you host the comments, is a little bit more tricky to implement. So we're trying to establish what is a minimum viable product before we eventually expand on the functionality. So that's one key thing. Another key thing is that we're looking at potentially, and that's where a little bit vague, but we want to see what else can we do on top of ClickSense, be it some sort of exploratory self-service tool, perhaps using even ClickCore. But you know, wrapping up the team in Poland is a key element to parallelize development streams. And we're also hiring some more people starting in January here. So with this, hopefully beginning of Q1, we will then announce the big, not just extensions, but like big new things that we can introduce with Vizlib. Good news is also we're Ruby sponsors at Connection, so we have to show something nice in May. Go big or go home, they say in Texas. So I hope this answers the question. So one question is, variables didn't work for me in the sheet menu. Did I reference it correctly, incorrectly? That is, that's part of a ticket. Very likely, just so you know, whenever you're referencing variables in any of the actions are the same across all our extension suite, right? But if you look at the individual actions, let's say I'm looking at the Vizlib sheet menu here, and I want to set a variable. You just need to make sure that when you set the variable, you put at the top the variable name without any equal sign. So don't do this, the variable webinar, because that will evaluate the webinar. Keep it simple. We're just interested in the name and then put in a value. And eventually that should work. And if that doesn't work, then we'll take a look at this in more detail. And I think that's a little bit of issue that we get a lot of tickets on. Don't include the equal sign. That's evaluating the variable before we can read it. Another question is, do you need to add the sheet menu extension to every sheet? So the answer is yes and no. So unfortunately, we need to load the extension at some point, right? If you add the sheet menu on the landing page, and then that's the 100% guaranteed page that everybody lands on before they start exploring the app, then you can add it there and it'll be moved on and across the next other sheets will be carried over. If it will not be the one landing sheet, then you will need to place the sheet menu on every sheet that you have that will become a landing sheet to ensure that this will be there. Now, you can obviously shrink it to something very small, and we're also exploring now a method where you can just hide it behind the sheet as well. That's possible. So that will be part of the next updates, effectively. And so here's a question. Will I be able to link each row to another sheet when we're looking at our table feature that we have? So the answer is, I don't think so. Let me check. Perhaps that is actually possible. Although I don't think so, to be honest. But that's an interesting request, and perhaps you can elaborate on this a little bit more to see why that would be of interest. I mean, I think we could implement that functionality. It would be a little bit of a workaround or overkill, but at the moment you can come in here, go to this example that I just created, at the very bottom, activate sheet from list, right? Or you can also add a custom one where you add the sheet ID. But at the moment, this is going to be fixed for the whole column. It's not on a row level. We could explore it on a row level. If that's something that you see a compelling reason to implement, then we could add it technically. Yeah, we can add it and then make this a feature. So perhaps add it as a feature request, and we will be happy to have a look at it effectively. One second, I am making also David an organizer so he can look at the questions that I'm not going to be able to answer all of them. So there's several of those. So there's a question in the Vizlib Marketplace, right? So the Vizlib Marketplace, as already highlighted, is separate to Vizlib. So these are partners putting their extensions on our platform to leverage the licensing model that we have developed, the IP protection model, but also the streamlining. Those extensions are not part of the Vizlib library subscription. However, if you are interested to subscribe to any of those, we can happily resell them. So we can put them as a line item and package them together with the Vizlib Vizlib library solution, obviously with an added fee effectively, which is whatever is advertised on the individual extension page. So we've done that with several customers, and that works quite well. And you can send a ticket to us, and we will just forward it to the respective partner. So it's all being managed by us effectively in this case. So there's another question, which is, oh yeah, can we open another dashboard from sheet menu? And the answer is yes, you can, right? If you go to the sheet menu example that we have here, you can click on the sheet menu, and instead of navigating to a sheet, you can actually here add an action, and that action could be open URL. Right, and when you open URL, you can then put your other ClickSense app, right? Here, see here, open URL, and you can even open it, I think, in the same window. So it's almost like a seamless transition. So you can add the other app's URL here, and you can even pass selections using the URL, so you can implement document chaining quite nicely here as well. And I think that's actually a valuable thing here, right? So you can open another ClickSense app, but you can open another Cognos report, another ClickView app, and give basically your users a unified experience without them having to go to 3, 4, 5 different platforms. So I think that's also a very, very valuable aspect that we have implemented with this. So another question, is the sheet menu extension fully responsive? So I think I answered that by showing, so you can actually shrink the screen, and then eventually it becomes like a burger icon here when it becomes too small. So that is working. However, what we're doing is we're working also on the second version in parallel, which will allow you to change sheets by swiping, for example, in your iPad. So recognizing those actions effectively. So there's another question. So you have June 18 ClickSense version, and you need to install L17 extension as printing to PDF, and PowerPoint is supported now. Are these supported in June 18 version? And the answer is yes. Even April, even February, and typically, unless there's an issue with ClickSense, we should support at least the past 6 versions, so the past year or year and a half. So if you have any issues with that, let us know, but June is definitely supported. Right, time is almost up. We have, yeah, one more question around setting the variables. Okay, I think this has been answered by David. Yeah, there's another question from one of our esteemed customers. So around SLAs for Subitic bug-related tickets, right? So obviously, it's important to note, you know, for those of you who have been in contact with us, we're responsive as much as we can. We jump on a WebEx to help you if it makes things simpler. We even take the time to analyze your ClickSense apps to investigate, you know, where issues can be lying. we're on top of this because any reports or bugs or issues or performance issues you report with us are not only affecting you, are affecting other people as well. So we highly incentivize to look at them. Now, obviously, there is also a reality, which is, we're a product company, and we're also far from perfect. And it's not being made easy by click by having multiple versions, multiple browsers, but we're still very, very stable, compared to the number of permutations that you can have with all those development cycles. Whereas we look at the bugs and we look at them as much as we can, it's nearly impossible for us to know when we'll be able to fix a bug. Sometimes a bug is fixed with one line of code. Other times it's literally a 3-month exercise, right? So supporting printing to PDF and PowerPoint, that was not a one line of code. That was literally rewriting our extensions for that purpose only. Sometimes it's easy, we resolve it, and we have proven that turnaround time with many of you. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes not even easy to trying to replicate this, right? So it's difficult to put SLAs on these things. Internally, we do have service level agreements that we try to keep to make sure people are responded to and that we do not forget about anybody. Which are, depending on the priority of a ticket, anything between, for urgent things, we're here within 4 hours and resolve the tickets, to if it's a low priority, we aim to resolve this in 2 weeks effectively, right? Obviously, as a customer, you can set the priority, so you can help with that. But coming back to this, especially with bugs, there is no SLA. So it might even sometimes be impossible to fix them. We had click bugs that were interfering with our API code that we couldn't do anything about it. We could only say, look, upgrade to the next extends version when it comes out. But we're trying to improve on this. That's why we're growing the team as well. We're obviously growing the quality of our pro. We have testers. We now have a much more rigid testing cycle. That's kind of reflected, unfortunately, adversely on the releases of the combo charts and the waterfall chart. I hoped we would be releasing them now in December, but obviously quality comes first. So these things are all part of the progress that we're working on. But obviously, coming back to you guys, if you have questions, bugs, or any issues, the more help you can give us, try to replicate this, provide us with steps to reproduce it, the faster this will become. In our experience, the time we spend on a bug is typically 80% trying to replicate, to investigate this, and 20% trying to fix this, right? So the more you guys can help us with the 80%, the faster we will be with the 20%, and the more we can focus on those things. I know it's not a on-the-spot answer, but hopefully, it kind of gives you a good picture of how we do. And obviously, there's room for improvement, and we are improving tangibly, but yeah, this is work in progress. So cool. With this, I know we exceeded the time. Thank you, everybody who stayed a little bit longer. Have a look at the extension, give us your feedback, explore it. And yeah, we look forward to hear back from you. And if we don't, have a great Christmas break, a happy New Year. And hopefully we're going to then join each other on the next webinar in January with a lot of energy to go and make everybody's organization more data-driven. Thank you so very much, and speak to you all